Good morning and welcome to the St. Augustine Chronicles. I'm so excited today. I have Rosamond Parrish in the studio. Rosamond is a local artist. She's one of my favorites, and I'm just so excited to hear her story and learn more about how she creates her art. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about the two sponsors that we have for this show. I'm grateful for the Kookaburra Coffee for being one of our sponsors. Rather than read the prepared read, I had the Kookaburra owners in last episode, and they focused on their customer service. They're really particular about customer service. As a local coffee brand and local coffee shop, I can attest to the fact that I'm at Kookaburra locations all the time. I try to do many meetings there, and every single time I go in, I'm greeted with a smile. They treat me as if I'm an important customer. I'm not. And their service is fast, but I have talked in the past about how much I love cold weather, and my favorite thing about Kookaburra is their absolutely fantastic hot chocolate. It is the best in the country. So if you want to support local owners and the local economy, please stop at Kookaburra Coffee. They're a wonderful group of people. Thank you for being a sponsor of my show. And then the other sponsor is my brokerage, 97 Park, residential and commercial real estate. Today, I thought I'd just let you know that we made a point when we opened the brokerage of deciding that we wouldn't charge transaction fees. Transaction fees are charged by almost every other brokerage I see. And it's a way to do business, but I decided that we were not going to charge any extra fees over and above the commission that we receive. So we do not have any transaction coordinators. Every one of my agents, including myself, does all of their transaction from start to finish. That is the only point of contact that you need within our brokerage. There's no one else that takes over and now you're dealing with them. That way we don't have to charge a transaction fee. I've seen transaction fees up to $500 per transaction. We do not charge that. So it's a distinguishing feature of my brokerage, and if that appeals to you, you can reach out to me at 904-297-3471, 97 Park, residential and commercial real estate. All right, Rosamond, the real stuff. Let's get going. So I usually start with what brought you to St. Augustine?
Well, I lived in Jacksonville for a long time, and I just knew about St. Augustine, and I got involved in the St. Augustine Art Association. I also studied at Flagler College with Jean Trummel when she was teaching oil painting, and I used to drive down with some friends and take lessons from Jean, and I just loved St. Augustine. I love the art community here, very cohesive community. So time came for me to move away from Jacksonville, and I thought about Fernandina. And I thought about St. Augustine, and I sort of flipped a coin, and here I am.
And when was that?
Oh, my goodness. It was early 90s, I think.
So Jean Trummel was a very prestigious artist, right?
Oh, yeah. She's the grandmother of all the artists here.
And when she passed away, I know I was on the board for the St. Augustine Art Association at the time, and her family donated many of her pieces, and she just produced so much art. It was incredible.
Jean was very enthusiastic about her art, and I call her schizophrenic, and I sort of explain some of my schizophrenia in art by doing different kinds of things and different mediums. And Jean was wonderful. Everything she did was, if she did a sketch, it was great. It was an oil painting. It was a portrait. She was just great at doing all kinds of things. And also she was very supportive of all the artists. In fact, she started AGOSA, the art galleries of St. Augustine.
Yeah. What was St. Augustine like when you moved here? It was a very small town.
It was a lot smaller. There was no McDonald's. There was no Home Depot. There was no traffic. It was great.
Did you live close to downtown when you moved?
I did. I lived downtown. Uh-huh.
And there really weren't the options that there are now to not live close to downtown or in St. Augustine Beach.
That's true. There weren't. There were a few condos around, but mostly it was downtown or else, or at the beach.
Do you feel like the downtown core was more connected to the people of St. Augustine back then?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, people were more active in things, and like I say, that's one reason I moved here, because the arts community was very supportive, and everybody participated and was very enthusiastic, and it was just a great community. It still is, but like you say, it was a smaller community then.
Yeah, I think it's starting to be. I think the downtown core, which really makes St. Augustine unique, is starting to be a little bit disconnected from really the what we call locals, right?
Oh yeah, I used to go to the art association, and I've entered every show there was for the last 25 years, and I would know everybody in there. I'd look around at the paintings, and I could almost look at a painting and tell who did it. Now, I was in there yesterday to see their, oh goodness, I've forgotten the name of this.
It's the
show.
something about things not in the right place.
Exactly, yeah. And
that wasn't doing it justice. It's a cool show, but I can't think exactly.
I can't think of the name either. But anyway, I didn't know very few of the artists in there that entered it, which is a good thing because we have lots of students entering, but we have lots of people from all around, people from Orlando and DeLand and Fernandina. We have artists who come from other places to participate now.
Well, I've bought a lot of pieces from the Art Association, and I have a piece from an artist in Iran.
No kidding.
I don't know how it was entered in a show.
Right.
And then I remember there was an artist originally from China. I believe she lived here at the time, but her artwork was absolutely incredible. I want to say it might have been watercolor.
It was, yeah. And she's won major international awards, and her work is worth thousands.
Yeah.
She's a wonderful artist.
Yeah.
I see her work from time to time here. So that's one good thing about growing, is that we are including people from other places more, and we've gotten quite a name for ourselves. We have a wonderful art association here.
We do, yeah. So how did you first know that you could draw?
Well, people say, oh, you have such talent. And I say, well, you have to have an aptitude for something. And when I was a small child, I guess maybe 8 or 10 years old, my grandmother lived near Auburn University. And at that time, there were some of the war vets who came home from World War II. And one had a wife who was an artist. And my grandmother had me take pastel classes from her. And I realized then I loved drawing. And I wish I still had some of the things I did at that time.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, would be.
So do you feel like you had that ability, or do you feel like she taught you to have that ability?
Oh, goodness. I never thought about it that way. I think a good teacher can not teach you something, but just guide you in the right direction. They can just suggest things to you and all, and that's what she did. It's been a long time ago, so I've kind of forgotten, but I just loved it. I always wanted to draw. I always got in trouble in high school by drawing in the margins of my books. And
and we had a terrible thing to get in trouble for. I mean,
we had an English teacher, Miss Williams, who's long gone now, and she always wore funny old shoes, and I would sit there and draw her shoes and entertain my classmates with my drawings. So it's been a lifetime affliction.
Do you think that the ability to draw is genetic? It seems to me it's almost like singing. Like often singing is passed down from parents to child. Do you feel like the ability to draw is something that is passed down?
I don't really know. I never thought of it that way, but it could be. My uncle, who passed away in World War II, but he was a wonderful artist. And I have another uncle on the other side who's a nuclear physicist, and he's a marvelous watercolorist. And so maybe it's a family thing.
It seems to me like it is, but I can't draw at all. So I'm fascinated by people who can draw. I'm fascinated by the ability to take something in your brain and have your hands create that. I don't have that connection. I have a disconnect there. So I'm musically inclined, and I've had lessons and things. So I can do it with music, but I can't do it with any sort of art. And And that's just fascinating to me. One of my best friends, he lives in Las Vegas, but he's an artist and he worked for Caesar's Palace for a long time as their graphic artist in-house. And we used to play Pictionary back when I was in my 20s and I lived there. We used to play Pictionary, and whether he was on my team or not, I always cheated and looked at what he was drawing when it was his turn because he could just draw anything. And I remember one time we were playing against each other. He was drawing and I was drawing, and it was something about a bus. And so I couldn't draw a bus. I'm like, I drew a square with two circles in it like headlights, but I couldn't draw any of the perspective, And he's over there drawing away and clearly a bus. And I just said I pointed to my partner and I said, look at his, I can't do this for something as simple as a bus.
Well, I think you have an aptitude for something. I took piano for 10 years and I can't play Rock of Ages.
Yeah.
It just never clicked with me, but I've always liked to draw. And when I teach now, I teach a lot of sketching classes, and I can tell some people it doesn't look anything like what we're drawing, and other people just get right in there and they see every little nuance and every little stem in the flower. And I don't know, and you can't teach it. You can tell people to look and you can encourage it, but it is something innate.
And it's so interesting, the different styles that come from people, right? So like the abstract type of art, sometimes I'm very uneducated, so I don't know how to say it any other way than an uneducated way, and I'm sure there's a better way to say what I'm asking. But I see artists who say that their art is something, like, for example, an apple, let's just say, and they say in an abstract way, this is an apple. And I look at it and go, wow, I would not have guessed that's an apple. It's not bad art, it's just I wouldn't have guessed that. But their interpretation that they put out is so different from a true, I guess, still life where it truly is an apple. That's really interesting to me, that artists can take something and say, okay, I'm going to draw an apple, but it doesn't always look the same, and it's neither good nor bad. It's just art.
Exactly. Right. Well, I'm not a good one to speak about abstract art. I'm like you. I have limitations as far as understanding it. I've tried it. I've done some of it, but some in watercolor. But it's not my thing. I like realism more, or an abstraction of a certain thing. And I like collage. I'm like Jean Trummel. I like different media too. But as far as abstraction, it's not my thing. I admire it though. I love it, and I've had a couple of abstract arts in paintings in my house.
Did you go to school formally to train for art, or how did you, once you realized you had an aptitude and you loved it, where did that take you? What did you do with that?
I wanted to study graphic design and advertising, but and this is saying something about my age, I guess. I hate to say this, but back then, your mother always told you, well, you may not get married, so you need something to earn a living. So it was either a nurse or a secretary or a teacher.
Yeah.
And so I went to the School of Education. I got a degree in English literature, which I loved. I always loved to read. And I got another degree in Spanish, and I went to Mexico to get part of that degree. I spent some time down there studying, but then I started teaching after that. But I always had art in the back of my mind. I always wanted to do art.
Tell me about your time in Mexico. Do you mind if I ask you approximately when that was?
It was in the late 60s, I guess, and I was in Mexico City. I went to the National University, UNAM, it's known as in Spanish. I won't translate that for you right now, but it was a wonderful experience. All my instructors spoke only Spanish, no English at all, and I spoke very little Spanish at the time, but after a few weeks, the light sort of turned on, and I started to understand it. I lived with a Mexican lady. I was roommates with a woman who was a girl who was getting her master's in Spanish at Stanford, so she was a good influence. I found a Mexican boyfriend who played the guitar, and we went out and listened in Garibaldi Square and listened to the music on Saturday nights, wonderful Latin music. And so it was total immersion for several months and all. So I think that's the best way too. I would never have learned the accent that I have and the way to speak it that I learned in Mexico. And I love the arts and the crafts of Mexico. So that sort of seeped into my consciousness too.
Was that a brave thing to do at the time as a
Oh,
young
very,
woman?
very.
It seems like, because I'm 62, so I'm not, I do remember the time when women, weren't as free to do things as they are now, for sure. And I think about, as a young woman, going to Mexico City by yourself.
Well, I didn't go by myself. I went with three others from Auburn who were also planning to study.
But without your parents, without.
Oh, yeah. My parents were very, I won't say liberal, that's not the good definition. They were just very encouraging, and they thought if I wanted to go, why not, and they trusted me. They had always given me a lot of independence, but I drove down with these three other students.
Oh, that's even better. You drove down.
Yeah, we drove, and long drive from Alabama, that's for sure. And it was a huge culture shock in the beginning, but I loved it, and they didn't like it at all. They all turned around and went home right after that and left me alone. And luckily, I met these other girls that were studying Spanish, and that was the best thing that happened to me. So
why didn't they like it?
Mexico City was a big, frightening place at any time. It's a huge city and a foreign language, and everything's rushing around different. And I really don't remember. They just wanted to go home. And I kind of wanted to too, but my parents said, nope, we've been listening to this for a year. You're going to stay and tough it out. And I'm so glad I did.
Were you producing any art while you were there?
No, I was in classes 5 hours a day. And this roommate, the girl from Stanford that I was telling you about, said, well, we've got all afternoon free. Why don't we do regional dances of Mexico? And I had studied ballet for 10 years, so I loved dancing. So we went to the regional dances class and performed with all the Mexicans in the costumes and the flowers. So that was a wonderful way to get to know the culture.
What an interesting thing to do as a young woman.
It really was, yeah. And I wouldn't take anything for it, and thank my parents for letting me do that.
Yeah. So how did you start really focusing on art? Was that after you had a life, or was that, when did you decide to really, I think of you now as an artist. That's what I think of you as. You are an artist. When did you decide that art was going to be your focus?
I've thought about that a lot, and I really don't know for sure what the answer is, but when I married a lieutenant in the Navy and lived in Hawaii for 3 years, and while there, I took a drawing class that I absolutely loved at the University of Hawaii of Honolulu, and I loved the class. And then we came back and settled in Jacksonville, and I had children and started taking watercolor classes. And then I just decided it was what I really loved and just got more and more into it. And I was very, very fortunate that I got to know and took a class from Everett Draper, who was the Ponte Vedra artist. Anybody who's from this area would remember Everett. He lived right a block or two away from the club, and he did paintings for the club there. And he said to me one day, I'm ready to retire. Would you like to take over my job as teacher at the Jacksonville Art Museum?
Oh, what an honor.
In Koger Center at the time. It wasn't downtown. And I was thrilled, but also kind of, oh my gosh, what have I done? I had only taken a few classes in watercolor, so I started in with that, and just it grew from there.
Is watercolor your favorite medium?
Yes, it is. And
why? What?
The immediacy of it, and you never know what's going to happen exactly when you put the water and the paint on the paper and it flows. And it's just a fascinating medium, I think. You'd have less control in lots of ways than you do with oils or acrylics. And I just enjoy the result of watercolor painting.
Do you draw whatever you're painting first and then use the paint, or do you start with the paint?
It depends on the subject. If it's a real complicated subject, I draw it out. Um, but if it's something that's like flowers or something, I love to just start with a big wet brush and paint and and uh, and go from there and see what happens. Sometimes the most beautiful paintings happen when you don't draw them, so I enjoy that.
Watercolor probably doesn't allow for, I don't know how to phrase this, mistakes or touch-ups or whatever. As I would think, again, I'm very ignorant on this, but when I think about oils or acrylics, maybe you can go over what you've done, but with watercolor, it seems like it would be harder.
Well, there's some of that is true, but I've taught a class actually on how to correct your watercolors or how
Oh,
to change them. There's lots that you can do. You can lift paints up, and you learn through study of which paints are what they call staining, that are going to, once you put a Windsor green down, it's going to be there till next Easter. You're never going to get that moved. But then there are other paints that are not staining, that are transparent, that you can lift off the paper, so you can make adjustments and changes, and you can do more darks and more lights, and you can do a lot with it. But it takes a certain sophistication and a certain amount of study before you can do that.
do you prefer to paint from a scene that you're looking at, or do you prefer to paint from a photograph?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I'm really religious about one thing. I never paint from anyone else's photographs. Unless it's like, say, you went to Spain and you say, I've got a picture of the Alhambra. Rosamond, I want you to do this for me. Then I will paint from your, unless you decided to send me to Spain to paint it there. But
That's the way to go.
that would be great. But if you give me a photograph and you want me to paint from that, then I will do it. Otherwise, I paint only from my photographs, because there's a lot of happening when you take your own photograph. You are there. You understand the scene. You see things around it. You see more than just what is in the photograph, and you understand it better. So I'm just real, if the word is proper, religious about painting only from my own photographs. I don't copy things from other people's. I don't want people to say I copied anything.
But do you prefer to paint more from photographs your own versus looking at something, I don't know, live or whatever?
I don't care.
Doesn't
It
matter.
just depends on the subject.
Do you
Um,
feel like there's, like you, I'm wondering, do you have to have kind of an emotional connection to what you paint? Is there emotion that's coming from you when you're painting as well? Or is it really just more technique? I don't know how to
well,
phrase the question. Is do
a lot
you-
of times it's the motion, it's my involvement with the subject. I have to be interested in it. I don't. Life can be boring, and why live that way? You know, it's more interesting if you're doing something that you're really into and you really want to do. So, unless somebody asks me to paint a specific subject, I do something that I'm interested in, that I care about, and that translates in your art. I think if you care about something, that makes a big difference.
I want to get some of your artwork that you brought in up on screen in a second. But before I do that, I don't recall, and I could be wrong, but I don't recall ever seeing any art from you that was people. You do more landscapes and outdoor scenes and architecture as well. Do you paint people, faces?
Oh yeah,
You
I've
do?
done some, not portraits. I don't really particularly enjoy portraits. I've done a couple for people. Like I have a friend who had two little boys who'd caught some big fish, and I did a portrait for her of her grandsons, and I did that. But that's only occasional. I don't do that routinely. I really like architecture. I love cityscapes and that kind of thing. Um, Recently, my niece in Tennessee received a Fulbright scholarship to go
Oh,
to
good for her.
Yeah, we're really proud of her. She's really a shining star. And she's graduated with all kinds of honors from college. And then she
Sure.
got this Fulbright to go to Salamanca for a year. Her mother had also done that.
Oh.
So it was sort of a family thing.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So, and I asked her where she's going to be, and also she sent me some pictures. And then I started looking around, and I found some photographs of Salamanca, and I did paintings of the street scene. And if you can believe this, a month later, the whole family went over there, and they sent me a photograph of them standing on the same street in front of the same cathedral. So that was really thrilling. And At that time, I did have to paint from someone else's photograph because they didn't offer to send me to Salamanca.
Yeah, well, you need to change that.
I do.
But can you put the photo of her painting of Flagler? Can you put that up for the audience? I want to ask you some questions. And again, I apologize because I know nothing about art. So my questions are so ignorant. I don't know if I'm getting across what I'm really
please don't apologize because I know nothing about podcasts. So we're both learning today. And this is fun.
So this is Flagler College, correct?
Correct.
What I love about your art is it often seems, this one is actually more finished than a lot of your art that I've seen. And I have multiple pieces of your art in my home. And what I love about them is they seem kind of unfinished in a way. It's like you sketched out some of it, but you don't color it all in. And then you say, I'm done. And that really fascinates me.
Well, undone's not a good word. I'm sorry I said that.
No, that you're done.
Yeah. It's funny because it's kind of like let the mind feature what's in that area, that let them figure that out, and let your eye just go there. That painting that you just showed,
you can put it back up like
that. It's actually a print. I sold the original to a man who's from Tampa, who's on the City Commission of Tampa, and he has a place over here. So he's bought several of my pieces, and he saw that one, and he said, I wasn't going to sell it. Let me back up just a minute. I did this in the plein air event
I love
for the
that
Art
event.
Association. I always participate in that. And so it was a really hot day, so I got under the arched area out in front of the Lightner facing the statue. You see the back of Pedro Menendez there, the dark figure there. Yep. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to do this with a brush and just see what happens. And I sat down on my little stool and spread out my watercolors in front of me. And I got a brush and the paints, and I just started painting without any drawing. And I don't know what it is, but sometimes, this is really funny to say, I hope this doesn't come back to haunt me. I just think God sometimes guides your hand. I really do. Sometimes just magical things happen and you don't know why. And that was the way with this particular painting. And I sat there until the heat got to me. It was probably an hour in the afternoon sun in the early spring. It was a very hot day. So I did that one totally without any drawing, and I was real happy when I finished it.
Can you keep that up, Blake, while we talk about it?
But I love Flagler College. I love architecture and all the spires and Menendez and all the story of our history is just so fascinating. So this is really an iconic print painting.
Yeah, and again, some of them, in fact, a couple of them that I have in my home are more undone or unfinished than this one is, but you can still see what I'm talking about. And that's my favorite thing about your art, is that it, in a way, seems like you didn't finish, but in your head you said, no, I'm done. This is good. I love that about your art.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And
that's encouraging.
There's another local artist, Nancy Hamlin Vogler.
Oh, yeah.
I realize that you're not the same. Maybe you think you are the same type of artist. I shouldn't assume. But to me, your art isn't really similar, but in some ways it is, because her art kind of has that unfinished sort of look on the edges, and I love that.
Well, Nancy and I both studied with Louise Freshman Brown at the University of North Florida. And Louise is just a wonderful encourager. She's so smart, and she's a wonderful artist herself. And I took actual real classes for credit because I didn't have a degree in art, so I went out to UNF and a couple other places to get a degree and studied with her. And Nancy studied with her too, and maybe some of that, Louise holds workshops, and she encourages you to go where it leads you. Always know exactly where you're going with your art, but I think Nancy follows that same method that that Louise encourages. You just never know what you're going to end up with sometimes. Sometimes it's a miracle, and sometimes you throw it away.
Well, I will say that's a talent, though, because coming from someone who has no artistic ability, I just can't take anything anywhere. So yeah, that's a talent that you have, that you can perhaps just let it flow and see what comes of it. I
think a good teacher teaches you to do that, to see what's happening as you go along. And Louise did that. She was a marvelous instructor.
How inspiring is it to live in a city, if you're interested in architecture and your paintings reflect a lot of that, how inspiring is it to live in a city where we have so much interesting architecture?
Very. I think it's just a wonderful thing because I can go walking downtown, and I've been here now, how many years since, what did I say? 30, over 30 years I've been here, and I can go walking downtown and see something new every time I go, and something new that I want to interpret in my art, or something I want to sketch. And so that's really wonderful. We've got a new artist, a street artist. I don't know if he likes to be described that way, but
I probably know who you're talking about.
Obi, yeah, and he calls me his best friend. I met him in the first plein air that we did at the Art Association, and he and I were painting on Avalaise Street. And I remember that day it poured down rain or something. It was real hot that morning, and there were tourists everywhere. It was every obstacle you can possibly imagine for your art. And I had never seen him before, and he's this great big guy, and he's up there standing up painting, and I'm sitting in my chair trying to sketch around the tourists that were there. And later on, he won Best of Show, and I think I got second place or something when they judged what we had done at the plein air event. It was over at the Yacht Club, I believe, and I looked at his work, and I thought, gee, that's kind of neat, And so I started talking to him, and we just kind of became friends. And,
he's quite prolific.
He really is. Well, you have to admire somebody who earns their entire living from their art. Mm-hmm. And he paints every day, regardless of the weather, regardless of the things that are going on. So I have a couple of his calendars. I haven't bought one of his originals, but one day I'd love to have one. But he also sees things like I do. You look at it differently every day. The weather changes, the skies change, the light changes. One thing I love about St. Augustine is the light. And in fact, you haven't mentioned it, and I didn't bring them today. I did 2 books on St. Augustine, one on Lincolnville. You probably have it. And one
Several.
On St. Augustine.
I give them as gifts.
Well, the Lincolnville book is long out of print. I published that myself. But I talk a lot about the light in St. Augustine. That's one thing I enjoy, especially early in the morning. The light is just beautiful on our beautiful old Spanish buildings.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I did want to touch on that, and particularly in Lincolnville. So I can understand why the architecture of, for example, Flagler College or the Casa Monica or the Leitner or some of those historic landmark structures would be appealing to an artist. But what I think is so interesting about you, Rosamond, is that you took Lincolnville, and this is not a disrespectful term, but it's going to sound disrespectful. Some of the more, run down buildings, but just not the premier buildings in Lincolnville. But you took just buildings that really made up Lincolnville. Lincolnville is eclectic, and it's super cool and artsy, and it's historic, but some of those structures, they're not in the best shape. Mm-hmm. And you painted them. And
they're the most fun to paint.
Yeah, and I love that.
Peeling paint is wonderful.
Yes, I love that about that sketchbook, that you didn't take all of the trophy structures and say, here's Lincolnville. You really captured the vibe of Lincolnville with your choices. Can you talk about that?
Well, I'll back up again a little bit about that. I was in the Altrusa Club, and Altrusa raises money for scholarships for women, and we were in charge of the Lambias House. And in order to raise money for the upkeep of the Lambias House, which is over on St. Francis Street.
Yeah.
And in order to raise money, every now and then we would get David Nolan, our local marvelous historian, to do red train tours through Lincolnville. And I knew nothing about it to start with, but I always would go on the tours and sit right behind him and take notes and sketch as we went along. And so one day he saw my sketches and he said, and David just knows everything about Lincolnville history because he worked, I don't know if the city or the county, but he was an appraiser for all the properties. He knows everybody. He knows a lot of the residents at that time. This is 20 years ago now. But some of them are gone now, unfortunately. But David just knows everything about Lincolnville, so I just absorbed everything about the buildings and the history that I could. And he saw my sketches that I was doing on the trip one day, and he said, sadly, there's no book about Lincolnville at all. There's stuff online that you can find up on the internet, but there's no book. So I started doing more sketches of it, and then I asked him if he would write the history for me. And he said no, he thought that I should do it, which was a big disappointment to me because I wanted his name associated with my book, of course, and his knowledge. But I spent about 6 months in the library and on the internet, and I have an English major, so I can put two words together. So I wrote the history also, and I spent a year working on the book. But I was really pleased with it. I learned so much about the history. I interviewed people, and I loved trying to decide which buildings to put in. You could do everything in Lincolnville. People would come up to me and they'd say, well, why didn't you do my house? Well, I just had to pick and choose, and there's no rhyme or reason to it in as far as describing it for other people. But I was real happy that I was able to do that.
Yeah, and like I said, I love the choices that you made because you put some of the maybe structures that weren't kept up so well, but that's Lincolnville, and it's also it's more authentic, and it also gives you the vibe, the feel. I loved. I did view that sketchbook as a history of Lincolnville. I think
exactly
you very
that's
much accomplished that.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about if you ever want to write a book, please talk to me first. It's a lot of work, and you don't do it for the money. But I realized here I have published this book now, and it cost me thousands to print it. And my son is a graphic designer, and he put it together for me. And then we went to the printer and got it done. And then I realized, well, nobody's going to buy it if I don't advertise it and publicize it. What's the word?
Put it out there, yeah. Publicize
Put it out there, yeah. And so I did over 25 talks to different organizations. I talked to the Rotary Club, the churches, the women's groups, everybody I could think of that would have me to come and talk to them about it. So I sold the book through that, and I sold over 3,500 copies and reprinted it 4 times. So that's why there's none left now, because I pretty much exhausted myself with it. But people still ask me about it.
I think you should do another print of it.
Oh, well, we'll see. I got a text yesterday, opened up my phone, and here's this text from this girl saying she just saw it. Her daughter's a student at Flagler College, and she had seen the book, and could I find one? Could I sell her one? I said, there's not any left. But somebody just told me there was one popped up on eBay, so I guess I'm going to be famous one day when you get the rerun on eBay.
Rosamond, I think you should reprint that. I think it's important that that's available, and I think it's a very unique way to tell the story of an area of our town. I think you should reprint that.
Well, the only thing is, I looked at that seriously a few weeks ago with my son, the graphic designer, and he said, Mom, you're going to have to redo almost every page because so many of the people have gone. Carrie Johnson, who was just the voice of Lincolnville, she did the calligraphy for the titles in there, and she's long gone. Other people have passed away or have moved away. A lot of the buildings have been changed so much you wouldn't recognize them.
I wouldn't want you to change a thing. I would want you to keep it the way it was, because that's what it was at the time. I wouldn't want you to modernize it. I would want you to sell it today still as the way it was when you first printed it, because that's so important, because that is the history.
Well, I'll think about that.
I think you should do it.
But then, of course, then I have to sell it again. I end up with all these stacks of books
Amazon,
under my bed.
Flagler College Bookstore.
Yeah, and the Leitner has been really good about selling them for me. there's several places in town, that bookstores that have sold them for me.
Do your own website and do social media ads. You can do that. You can get some. Have a
With your help.
Well, have a Flagler College student help you with that.
Right.
You can do it. But I think you should reprint it. It was really. I loved going into Blue Hen back when they were in Lincolnville.
Blue Hen sold more than anybody for me. That was back when they were on Martin Luther King. They sold lots of them there.
I think every vacation rental property in Lincolnville should have that sitting in their vacation rental.
And a lot of them do.
And if it leaves, they should buy another one. It's just the gift that they give to guests if they take it.
Well, who would have thought that a little old Southern girl from Alabama would end up writing a book about St. Augustine's Black community? And I love it. To me, it was a good story. And it meant a lot to me.
You did just an amazing job with it. I really loved it. I gave it out as closing gifts for some people when they would buy in that area downtown. And because I felt like, they're coming from elsewhere and they don't understand the history. And
they don't understand how wonderful the history is there.
Yeah. And I wanted them to realize kind of the honor that they had in being the next owner of a property in an area that was really historic and had so much history. So,
well, I was really fortunate that I did it at the time that I did. I met Dr. Haling right just a few months before he died, and he said to me his comment, and it will just be forever burned in my brain, I worry about gentrification. And
he was right.
He was so... He knew it was happening, but there was, people were moving in. They were recognizing what a beautiful place it was, how close it was to town. A lot of the students were living there, and then when they graduated from Flagler, they wanted to buy a house or rent a house and live there. So it did change, and
we're going to see the same thing
like
in West
everything
Augustine.
does. Well, I wrote an essay in one of my later versions of the book. I wrote an essay about gentrification, about how neighborhoods change. It's sad, but it's one of those things that just happens.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Yeah. And as more people want to live here.
And there are good things about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look on the brighter. There are good things. There are houses that have been fixed up that were falling down. You could walk through the floors. I lived just on the other side of a house that's in my book, Vonda Lynn Clark. And I met her before she died, and that was the cutest house. She had little blue bunnies out in the yard, and she had everything painted blue, and she had flowers everywhere. And she passed away, and her brother said to me, he came to see about her estate, and he said, I'm going to sell the house. And I said, well, my other son is a general contractor, and he likes to fix places up. So he ended up buying it, and you could walk through the floor. It was insulated with 1950s newspapers. And so there were houses like that needed rehabilitation and all. It's sad to lose the history, but there were houses like that. So we tried to keep it as though it, was like it used to be, and keep the history. We saved the history. Karen Harvey, the local historian here, Karen helped me. We brought out 4 giant packing boxes of things out of that house that Karen cleaned up the mold from them and helped me organize it, and we donated it to Charles Tingley at the Historical Library. So that's saved for that. It was like a little history museum in her house.
You know who's got a museum is Len Weeks from all the historic properties.
I bet he does.
He's got warehouses full of stuff coming out of his houses.
I bet he does.
It's really incredible.
Well, I was going to mention that the Lincolnville book got me back in one of my few loves is sketching, and I've been doing some sketching classes, and I taught at the gallery that I've been in for the last year. I've recently resigned. It's a wonderful gallery, the Art Collective on Cordova Street.
Yeah.
But I have had a lot of my sketches in there, and they sponsored a workshop for me to give about travel sketching or local sketching. And now I'm going to be giving one at my church, Memorial Presbyterian Church, speaking of architecture.
Yes. Yes.
So it's just for people in the church. We're going to start doing a sketch class in there.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Not really a class, but we're going to all do directed things together.
Blake, can you put the piece of art that she brought that has the muley grass? Can you put that up? Do we have that one? Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah. So I love the pop of color on this in the front. How do you get perspective? How do you do that? Like from a non-artist, I wouldn't know how to make the painting work, that the trees are far away and the muley grass is in the front. How do you do that?
Well, this is at the Villages of Saloy, which is a over 55 condo community out on 16, and they have beautiful grasses there that in the fall they turn this gorgeous silver pink, and I was dying to paint them. So this is looking up at one of the ponds there, and off in the distance, things get smaller in the distance as you see the walking path on the left-hand side to your left here,
Mm-hmm.
and then the grass is in the foreground, and I
Mm-hmm.
love showing that in all its color. And then everything's just pretty green, and it hasn't turned brown for the fall yet. And then the water goes off and into a point. Things get grayer in the distance. If you see sort of a grayish back in the back behind that tree, that's how you show distance. Is with things getting smaller and being larger up closer to you.
I wonder if being in your head is walking around all day thinking, oh, I should paint that. Oh, I should paint that.
Yeah. You should see my phone. I have 9,000 photos on it. And any day now, I'm going to start painting one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that and go, I wouldn't have, because I'm not an artist, I would have maybe thought that was pretty or that was an interesting view. I probably would view it more from a real estate perspective as a selling point. But I can just picture you all day long, seeing just everywhere you look, thinking, I should paint that. That would be a good paint.
I know. I really do. I have a book that's been very inspirational. It's called Painting as a Pastime by Winston Churchill.
Oh, yes, he was a painter. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Painting saved his sanity in World War II. Mm-hmm. He started painting then, and he was very timid about it in the beginning, and some friend of his came in and grabbed his brush and slashed it on the canvas and said, just get started and all. But I love what he says. He says when he passes away, when he goes up to the pearly gates, God's going to say to him, I've got all these glorious colors for you, colors that you never saw in your life and all. And I kind of feel that way because I'm not ready to go yet. And I've still got a whole bunch of paintings to do.
Blake, can you put up the Valentine's Day artwork that she brought? That one's so interesting.
Good. I'm glad. I want to talk about that.
I know that you do collage. I've seen some of those pieces, but to me, it's different. Well, I shouldn't say it's the same and it's different. So I think there's, from an uneducated standpoint, when I look at your collages, there's kind of a connection to that unfinished sort of style that you have in your watercolors. The collage, I can see some connections, but it's a totally different medium. Talk to me about when you decide I'm going to paint this. Is this going to be a watercolor piece, or I'm going to create artwork from this, inspired by this, and make it a collage? How do you make that?
Well, I love doing collages, but they do make a huge mess, and I'm in a condo now, and I don't have. When I had a house on Washington Street, I had a separate building that was my studio, 25 square foot building, and I could just spread out and have things, papers and pictures all over the place and stuff that I was going to use. I had a show at the Leitner. It's been 2 years ago. David Bagnall is the director there, and he was wonderful when he looked at my watercolors and he was enthusiastic and all, and I said, but you know what? I've got some collages that I've been doing. Would you be interested in seeing those? Well, I saw his eyes light up, and he actually featured my collages. They're all very large, and he was very enthusiastic about it. I did a series when I was on Washington Street, mostly. Some I've done since, with my two favorite women artists, Georgia O'Keeffe and Frida Kahlo, the Mexican artist. And I pictured them. I was inspired by Miriam Shapiro, an artist from New York, and she talked about collaboration. She did a collaboration with Judy Chicago, and I read all about their collaboration. They're inspiring each other. And I thought, what if Georgia O'Keeffe and Frida Kahlo took some trips together and had lunch just like women do? And what would they talk about and what would they see? So I started doing these collages.
That's so interesting that's how you got to that.
I did 33 of them.
33?
Yeah, and some of them are almost as big as I am, almost life size. So anyway, I think 5 or 6 of them were featured in my show at the Lightner, which I was really happy about. And anyway, I had so much fun, so much. I was using my imagination in all kinds of different ways. So Georgia and Frida went to Italy, they went to Spain, they went to Mexico, they went to New Mexico, they went to St. Augustine. And this one, I don't know if Georgia and Frida are in this one. I don't believe they are. I've got my mother and my aunt down in the left-hand corner. You can't quite see it. There you go, the 2 little girls.
That is
I always
so
put something personal. Oh, and I had Michelle and Barack riding the carousel back when we had the carousel. That was one of my favorites. And unfortunately, I don't. Well, one thing's good. I sell some of them, and I have prints still of that one. But this one I did for Valentine's. I did it last year, and it was it's a real challenge. You talk about abstracts. It's kind of an abstracted way of thinking.
Yeah.
You're looking for something. What belongs in this spot? Where do I need a light or a dark? Where do I need something of interest?
How do you know when you're done?
Oh, golly. You never do. You just quit sometimes. You don't really know. That one has, actually, I go to Goodwill's and pick out people's old clothes sometimes that have interesting patterns, and I cut them up. So that one's got a
across the bottom. It had some pattern.
Yeah, with some flamingos in it, which is typically Florida. So I have a commission from a friend right now, and I don't know what I'm going to do. She and her husband are lifetime offshore fishermen, and she wants me to do one because I did one of my father, who was a big fisherman, and all of his friends, and she loves my painting, but that one's one that's going to be passed down to my children. So now I'm working on doing something for her and getting the right images in it, and that's going to be a real challenge.
Is your home just filled with art that's finished, unfinished, just started? Like I picture an artist's home just being absolutely filled with art that is in different stages.
No, since I'm in a condo, I'm painting out in the sunroom now, and it's right off the front door, so I can't be too messy. But I use my spare bedroom to put all the things that are undone in there. But I'm surrounded by paintings done by people that I've studied with. I've been very fortunate to have traveled and studied with a lot of wonderful artists. And the Jacksonville Art Museum years ago had a marvelous program of education. And one of my teachers was Margaret Rothschild. And I have a huge painting, enormous one, that she did when she went to China, an oil painting. And other ones are done people that I studied with in California, and one in Italy. So I like seeing those. Those are inspiring to me. I have a couple that I've done. I was in Montana for a few years, and I have one with horses and cows and an Indian woman in there. So that one's the only one of mine other than the one of my father fishing with all of his fishing buddies.
Rosamond, I want to ask you, but I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm asking this first. Jerry Dixon, who was a local architect, I know that you know him. He did all of Conti Patel's hotels, and he did the River House, and he did so many structures around St. Augustine, and he was such a close friend of mine. And towards the end of his life, we had a discussion one time, and I said, Jerry, I think I wonder how you feel about someday you won't be here any longer, but your legacy will live on, and it's undeniable because every time I drive by the Bayfront Hilton, I think of Jerry. And when I see the Renaissance, I think of Jerry. And so, and I've talked to Len about that, Len Weeks, who's worked on so many buildings and historic buildings. And, you're the same. When you have paintings, when you're one day no longer here, your legacy lives on in so many places, not only in St. Augustine, but wherever your paintings have gone and where they're displayed. I want to tell you a story. You know a little bit about it. I bought not long ago a painting of yours of the Lightner Museum courtyard, and I gave it as a closing gift to a young couple, close friends of mine, close friends of their family. And they had just bought a house big enough so that they could start a family. And I knew this house was going to be important to them in their future, and I think they'll live there for a long time. So I really thought about what type of closing gift I wanted to give them. And I knew it had to be one of your paintings because he grew up in this town. He's got a connection to St. Augustine, and I couldn't think of something more important than giving them one of your paintings. So I just happened to find a painting of the Lightner Museum, and I thought, I love this. He and his father worked on the renovation of that, so I thought it would be important. I didn't realize after I gave it to them, they said to me, that's where he proposed to her, in that Lightner Museum courtyard.
Is that right?
And so what a connection they had to your painting. And I didn't know that. And now they're
mystical things happen.
And now they're starting a family in that house. And so things like that, where your painting will be in their life, on their walls forever.
That gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, how does it feel to you to know that you have this legacy that will live on in so many ways and in so many places? How does that feel to you?
It's a wonderful feeling. I don't like the word old, but I guess now that I've got white hair, people know that I'm not 25 anymore. And the gallery that I was recently in, the owner, Mayor, had a show for me, and she said, "You're a legend." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I hate that word." But I got to thinking, you know what? That was a real compliment.
It's an honor.
It really is. And I look back, and I'm a big believer in gratitude and because you can sit around and say, "Oh, poor me, I've been sick, or the family's not doing so well, and we need this, that, and the other." I'm so lucky I came to St. Augustine when I did. I'm so lucky I met the people I did that influenced me and inspired me. I'm so lucky that I have this, if you want to call it talent, 40 years.
Of course I want to call it talent.
You know what? One of my instructors said, talent is applying the seat of the pants to the seat of the chair.
Still, it's
There's
talent.
a lot of that. But anyway, I'm just so grateful for St. Augustine and all it's meant to me, and I hope that I've given something back.
Well, to this family, you definitely have, and I'm so happy that your artwork is in their home and that now they're starting a family and their children will see that artwork and the story behind it, which I didn't realize, but
I painted that at the plein air session for the Art Association.
And that's coming up March and
immediate.
April, right?
They're going to have another one. Yeah, it's every spring.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite times of year. I love that event.
It's
I love
fun.
seeing the art.
Yeah, and people do amazing things. So.
Rosamond, can you tell me where your art can be purchased?
Well, I'm not sure right now.
It's in the art collective, right?
I've just resigned. No particular reason except that I just want to paint a couple of commissions and take it easy and maybe do a couple of trips. No, it's a wonderful gallery, but I don't have a representation right now.
You need a website.
I could use a website.
You need a website, yeah. But you do usually have pieces at the Art Association for their exhibits,
Usually
and those can be purchased.
Yeah, I'm not in this particular show, but I'm usually in the honors show or one of their member shows during the year.
Yeah, you're often in those.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's your art. That's the other thing I love about your art. I look at your pieces and I know that's Rosamond.
And people can look me up. I'm artlady7@gmail.com. So they can look me up and contact me if they want to.
I really do hope that you print your Lincolnville sketchbook again, Rosamond, and don't change a thing. Because just like what I'm trying to create with this podcast, which is a living history, that's a historical record of Lincolnville that's so important. And I really hope you put that out again. You make that available. I think it's important.
Thank you. I did the St. Augustine sketchbook,
yes,
which is available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I don't have it myself, but the Lincolnville book is really important for the history, I think. Both of them are. I'm glad you have them.
Yeah. I have. Now I know my copies are.
Oh, my goodness.
I think I have one extra, maybe. Well,
this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for honoring me.
Oh, thank you for coming in and honoring me. I'm so happy that you told your story and that you shared the gift that you have with people who watch and listen to the podcast. So once again, Rosamond Parrish, one of my favorite local artists. She's just amazing. And she focuses on a lot of St. Augustine, like we talked about St. Augustine history and St. Augustine architecture and St. Augustine scenes. And so if St. Augustine is important to you and you have a connection, she's the artist you want to look at. So thank you, Rosamond. I'm so grateful for your time.
Thank you so much for all you do.
Yep. And thanks for tuning in to the St. Augustine Chronicles podcast.